leader without losing your job. Dive deep into humane leadership crafted for today's fast-paced business world. Don't miss our weekly YouTube live sessions every Thursday at 8:10 a.m. Central Time and 10:10 a.m. Eastern Time, where we engage and tackle pressing leadership topics. Listen to our podcast on all major streaming platforms and join us as we explore the essence of humane leadership in today's dynamic business landscape. I'm Chris Olerking, a Fortune 100 IT leader, alongside Roberto Torres, a seasoned startup engineering leader. Today, we will discuss how to help a past employee find a new or next role. Perhaps we haven't spoken to them in a few years. What are some of the things that we can do to help? Well, Roberto, what do you think?
That we as humane leaders will always help people if it's in our power to do it.
Absolutely. And, you know, I mean, sometimes if we're really good humane leaders, we will have people reach out to us from our past, right? You know, it isn't always just our immediate coworkers. And so sometimes people who you haven't spoken to in 2, 3, 5, maybe even 10 years or more could reach out to you and say, hey, you know, when we worked together, and again, I've worked with a lot of people a lot of years since I was at the same company for a long time. There are things we can do to help them, even though we may not know their immediate skills, the things that they've learned in the past, 5 years, because we haven't been around them and talked to them in the last 5 years. One of the things that I always try and encourage for people is to try and shorten their commute time. I know a lot of people have remote work options, but a lot of companies are starting to reverse those policies. So for me, one of the things that's key for quality of life and things that I like to help with younger employees to recognize is you got to work a really long time, a lot of years. And if you can find a job that's rewarding at a good company that is close to where you live, so you don't need to disrupt your family, that should be a high target, high priority to focus on potentially finding a job there. Because if you can take a commute time that was an hour one way and turn that into 15 minutes, you're saving over an hour and a half then every single day you go into the office. And I think a lot of our younger workers don't always, initially when they start working, appreciate how much time gets tied up in commuting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And one of the things here in Latam, I think there are very few cities that you could do that. Most of the people here in Latam don't care about traveling, commuting 1 hour and a half, or maybe more to arrive to a new job. So searching a new job, I would totally concur with you. Try to aim those companies in which you could be maybe 30 minutes or less from your home. If you cannot move to a new home, new city, try to reach out those companies. Usually in Latin countries, in Latin cities, we have either factories near us or companies, so it's feasible to reach that.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that I'd encourage people to try is, some of the AI tools. Now, I didn't go out and try this yet, but in the past, just doing Google searches lots of times would help people find jobs that were closer to them. You could bring up Google Maps and, put in your home address so that you get the map kind of centered around where you are, and just start scrolling to see what businesses are located in a 20-minute drive circle around your home. And you'd be surprised sometimes in some of these office complexes, at least here in the States, they have a tendency to build what are called office parks. And in those office parks, you could have some very large office buildings that can contain sometimes a single company, but sometimes many companies that have branches there. And you may find out that you've been driving past this office park that was kind of off the road that you didn't really notice, and there's 30 different companies in there that would be great employment opportunities if you only knew that that's where they were. So by looking at Google Maps, sometimes from that aerial view, you may be driving right past some great companies to work at, and you didn't even realize it.
Yeah, and one thing also is when you find out that there is a certain company near your home, what I would suggest is if there is a careers page within the site of that company and you don't find out a position that you can fit in, maybe search for who could be your next manager. You know, if you're in IT, you're in operations, you're in sales, try looking for those heads or for those chiefs and dig deeper and find out the email and send an email. You know, not say, hey, I want to work. I want you to hire me. But if you know the knowledge, the area you're in, try to sell you as much as possible. Let's say, for instance, since we are both in IT, that you are a manager of engineering. Okay, well, find out who's the head of engineering or who's the CTO, and in the body of the email, sell yourself, mentioning, okay, I had all these accomplishments. I know this tech stack, which fits your tech stack, and I could be a valuable asset. You know, people are always looking for new people for solving problems that they have. If you know the industry or you know the company and you might know which are the problems, try to bring the solutions by trying to gain an interview first, and then it will go on.
Yeah, certainly. And you may be surprised, you know, depending on how what age bracket you're in and how well you've maintained your LinkedIn profile and contacts. You may find as you do your search and you identify that you know, there's a particular company like, I don't know, maybe Underwriters Laboratories, you know, which is a big company that does testing of electronic products. You may realize, wow, they have a branch that's right near my house. It's not headquarters, but maybe it's a branch. And at that branch, they happen to do the kind of work that you do. So then you look at your LinkedIn contacts, and lo and behold, somebody you worked with 20 years ago who had left the company is now, you know, working there. And that inside contact, even though maybe you haven't talked to them in quite a while, hopefully you left a good impression with them, that they remember you. Don't be shy, and, you know, reach out on LinkedIn via the connection system to reach out to them. Let them know that you're interested in applying there, because sometimes the other problem is timing, right? You know, hey, if you're still currently employed, maybe there's not a lot of pressure or rush for you to find something new, so you can start to plant these seeds that you're interested in looking in other places without turning on the banner in LinkedIn you're open to work, because you don't want your current job to know you're ready to get out. But you can then, you know, let your contacts know that, well, I'm interested, I'm just starting my exploration. You know, you look through your contacts, hey, yeah, this person works at Zurich Insurance, this person works, I'm naming companies that are kind of in the neighborhood of where I used to live, Zurich Insurance and Motorola and Underwriters Laboratory and so on. And now all of a sudden, you know, you look at your contacts and holy cow, you know, I've worked for 20 years, let's say, I know 3 people at 4 different companies I, you know, would be interested in working at. And so really leveraging those contacts becomes important. The problem is sometimes we don't always maintain our LinkedIn contacts as well as we should, because we think, well, this is the last job I'm going to work at, and I'm going to only work here, so I don't need to invest the time in maintaining those contacts. Sometimes things don't always go as planned. So I even though I ended up working at the same company for 35 years, I invested in my LinkedIn contacts, and I have probably, well, I don't have as many as you, but I feel fairly comfortable that out of my 500 or so, I could probably call 150 of them and see if they had jobs. Like I'm connected to them well enough that I think they would be willing to do a little searching on their time within their company to see if there might be opportunities for me. So hopefully those kinds of things kind of help you think about ways to approach the job search.
Oh yeah, LinkedIn would be faster than an email, but in the end, a mix of both might help
Yes.
because maybe you and I receive a lot of emails in which I never do something about it. But in the
Shame on
end,
you. Shame on you. A humane leader should stay in touch.
no. That is because those are sales guys who want to sell me something
Oh,
that
that's
I don't
different.
need.
That's different. Sales guys, I'm sorry, salespeople who are on listening in, but sending me emails I didn't ask for is not going to get me usually to answer either 99% of the time.
Oh yeah, but when someone asks me for a job or something like that, I being honest, if I can help, I will do it. Otherwise, I might direct that person to someone I know who might hire or to be of help. But regarding LinkedIn, you have to shine your LinkedIn profile, get focused on the title beneath your name, on the about, on the knowledge that you have of the accomplishments, because in the end, as a social network, if you could do it, it will backfire positively for you. So it's really, really important to do that. And also modify and shine your resume. It's really important to be a match between LinkedIn profile and your resume. Yeah, yes, in your resume, you could explore more. Maybe you could add something else. It could be bigger, for instance. But in the end, both tools will help you because when you apply for a job through LinkedIn, the hiring manager will look at your LinkedIn profile. If it makes sense, it will download your resume. And if it makes sense, more sense, both of them, it will reach you. Otherwise, it will be like a conversion killer. If your LinkedIn profile doesn't match the position you're applying, they will get away. If they reach to your resume and it doesn't match, it will do the same. For instance, let's say that you apply as an engineering manager and you're proficient in web applications. If your LinkedIn says that you do, okay, you will get to the resume. But if you say in your resume that you have mobile applications instead of web applications, you won't get an interview. So we'll have to be a match for both of them.
Yeah, and I think that customizing and trying to understand what are the problems the company you're applying to is trying to solve. The more information you have, especially if you have an inside contact who can mention what are some of the struggles that the company's facing, if you can address that in your resume or highlight some things in your LinkedIn profile, that's going to be very, very helpful. So I would absolutely customize my resume. Certainly when I'm doing an application to a company, like I've gone to their website and I'm applying, it better be a custom resume for that job, that you're echoing back what they're looking for, what problems they're trying to solve. And then make sure, like you said, that your LinkedIn profile covers that to some degree. Now, if you've applied to 10 jobs at once, your LinkedIn profile's got to kind of cover a lot of things on 10 different custom resumes, but you have to balance that approach to be as aligned as possible. The other thing I was thinking of, and I pondered this when I was faced with leaving the company I was at for 35 years, is what do I want to do that's different? This is an opportunity. If I'm now, this person I believe is choosing to go, so it's not a layoff, but is this an opportunity to go in a slightly different or significantly different direction? And one of the things that I pondered doing was actually going into teaching at the local junior college. Now, I don't have a teaching background per se, but I have a leadership coaching background. And in my early days of work, I did actually teach some computer classes and software classes and things like that. And so I actually considered working at the local junior college, because you don't need a teaching certificate to teach at many of the U.S. junior colleges. You just need a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, which I have both. So I could have taught computer classes or some other things like that. And I really felt that that might be a good kind of really change of pace to try something totally new. And again, because I had a LinkedIn network that was pretty extensive, I actually was still on my local community college's advisory board from the industry perspective for computer science. And so I actually knew several of the professors there that were on their curriculum board. I would meet with them once or twice a year and consult on what's happening in the industry. It was just phone calls typically, but you got to realize that sometimes those opportunities, when you do look for a new job, maybe you should go in a completely different industry. So maybe you are in an industrial sector. Could you switch to a sector that's about education, or maybe a food industry? Switch to the food industry. Lots of things to consider, especially when you're looking in your circle. Like I said, I'd highly recommend doing the geographic search. But if in that geographic area, there are industries that aren't related to your past industry, don't be afraid of that. Maybe you go from manufacturing, you go into banking. Yes, a lot of the terms and vocabulary are different. You're going to have to learn different laws and regulations that are in banking. But so learn new things, and it could really refresh your energy in the career too by going into something that you're not totally comfortable with. Don't go straight from, well, I was in the automotive manufacturing, I'm going to switch from Ford to Chrysler. You can do that, and that's a pretty safe bet, and maybe you're more likely to get the job, but it's going to recharge your batteries and re-energize you to do better and greater things if you don't kind of push yourself a bit.
Oh yeah, one thing is, for all the people who are listening to us and might be in this situation, you have to understand that besides you, there are thousands of people who are looking for that specific job. And maybe those people have more knowledge about you. Let's say, for instance, that you lose your job, or you might be looking for someone in the mid-50s, okay? You have at least 30 years of experience working. You have a strong and robust knowledge about something in particular, but younger generations probably doesn't have as much as knowledge as you, but they have something else that you might not have. So be wary that if you go in an interview without learning more stuff, you might be facing an opponent who might be who should have more knowledge than you. So what I strongly suggest besides that is that if you're going to switch industries, awesome. Go deep dive into that industry, see, as you mentioned, all the problems and the solutions that you can bring, but get more knowledge. The thing is, I think that many people think that after a bachelor and then maybe some after a master or an MBA, knowledge has to not be learned anymore. I think that is something really bad. You have to be constantly learning. You have to be within your industry, within your position, within everything else, because problems are always in different industries, in different companies. If you could learn more, you will have an advantage that younger generation won't have. because you will be more fit for any position that you will apply than the usual ones.
Yeah, no, I agree. And in this day and age, I'll tell you, for learning topics, I've been using OpenAI. It's the free version. I don't pay for things like that. One of my buddies, my favorite price for everything is free, is what he says about me. Free is the best price. But even the free OpenAI, if you're new to an industry and you don't know much about it, just start there and start asking about, I want to learn about fire safety, because you're going to work for a company that builds and manufactures fire safety gear, the firemen's jackets and hoses and boots and respirators and all that kind of stuff. Start with OpenAI. What kind of equipment is needed for firefighting? Who makes it? Who are all the competitors? How do I know what's the best firefighting gear? And just start a dialogue with OpenAI, and you'll learn a lot about the industry in what I found fairly simple terms. And I've asked it some very complex engineering things about weight loads and other calculations, pressure calculations and things like that. It does a really good job of explaining very complex topics to the average reader. Probably the average reader who's at least completed high school and probably has a college degree. But if you're willing to invest the time in reading what OpenAI has to say, you could become much more educated on a topic pretty quickly. And I think I probably, if I was preparing for an interview today, I would practice with AI. I would use OpenAI and ask it, what kinds of problems does this industry have? What are some of the financial problems the industry is having, et cetera, so that when I'm in the interview, I might mention, I was reading that the number of firefighters that are retiring has gone up astronomically, because a lot of them are baby boomers and there aren't enough new firefighters. And so this new technology that you're using to remotely control the fire hoses is very interesting to me. Wow, you know something about our industry, even though you came from a manufacturing company that does aerospace. You know some things that we're facing in our industry as a problem. That's fantastic, and granted, don't make it seem like you're an expert because you just read some OpenAI things, but it shows that you've got a deep interest in what the company is trying to solve. What problems are they facing? And I think in any interview, the more you are a problem solver, you're bring the problem to me, I'll try and figure it out, the more likely it is that you'll get a job offer.
Oh yeah, and that is because in an interview, I would say like maybe 80-90% of people will give you the answers, on scratch of the surface, but that 10% will surprise you. And when you're a hiring, excuse me, when you're a hiring manager, you have to be surprised by someone who you are interviewing. If you're the interviewee and you have more knowledge, as you mentioned, but you go deep dive within OpenAI or maybe YouTube as well, maybe a mix of both, you will have a lot of knowledge. And when you propose solutions, it's better. Let me give you an example. A few years ago, I was working at a fintech. We gave personal loans through our web application, and there was a vacant position for the country manager. And I heard during an interview, because we were a committee, that a candidate say, okay, you know what I did? I went to your journey through your old lead form, and I had these suggestions. I know these gaps within your process, and I did this, and this. And when I look at the database, I found out that guy really applied for a loan, and we gave it to him, and he repaid 2 weeks later. So he applied for the loan and he had some interest, that he had to pay. But in the end, we were really, really surprised because that guy did something that most of the candidates didn't. He didn't reach far in the interviews, but that kind of stuff was really, really good. You cannot
Absolutely.
You cannot do that if you sell houses or cars. No, that dude, I bought a home, but in the end, if you do something that will provide value to the product or service that you're selling, a candidate will be an awesome candidate doing that.
Absolutely. And I think too, and I know we're getting close to closing time, but I wanted to add, just kind of one other point, and that is if you haven't been interviewing in a while, you really need to practice. It
Oh,
is not something that, you know what, I'm going to apply to this one job. This is the one I really want, and go in there and you haven't interviewed in 10 years. Not a good strategy. Being comfortable answering the questions does take practice. Sometimes you got to practice by applying to jobs that are not what you really want. And so maybe you do get the interview and your heart's not in it. So you can't necessarily go in and fake interest, but recognize that if you're rusty at interviewing, it's going to show. And so unfortunately, if your favorite number one super job you wanted to get is your first interview, then you're probably not going to get it unless you're an amazing candidate and really good at interviewing. So I would kind of prioritize my list of companies I'm applying for, and I might hold off a week or two for applying for my super favorite, I really want this one, so that maybe I get an opportunity to interview 2 or 3 times at some other companies that are my second choices, so that I have a little more practice in the field, in real time, really interviewing, because many people don't get an opportunity to interview much. They don't do much public speaking. And so when they go to interview, it's going to show. And I think if you can practice a little bit, be more relaxed, maybe even it's just doing a video conference call with some of your LinkedIn contacts. That may help you prepare, be a better speaker. Don't say and ums and ahs, and it'll go a little smoother for your interview then.
Yeah, indeed. Wise words, man.
Well, absolutely. So I know we're close to our ending time. I think it was a good topic. If people have questions, we'd always welcome to hear those questions, but we'll pick it up again next week then, eh?
You will. Thank you very much.